You know what's wild? Most people think learning a skill fast is about finding some hack, some shortcut that lets you skip the hard parts. They're looking for the cheat code, the life hack, the secret technique that top performers don't want you to know. But here's the reality. The fastest learners aren't cheating. They're just playing a completely different game. While most people are grinding through beginner tutorials for months, elite learners are using a framework that lets them go from zero to capable in weeks, not years. And the craziest part? It's not about working harder. It's about working structurally. Most people think skill acquisition is about time. They think if they just put in enough hours, they'll eventually get good. But that's the trap, because time without structure is just time. And structure without the right feedback is just pretending. So in the next 14 minutes, I'm going to show you the exact framework elite learners use to master skills so fast it feels unfair. Not because they're smarter, not because they have more time, but because they understand something most people miss entirely. And by the end of this, you'll have a system you can apply to literally any skill coding, design, languages, music, business, anything. I am a doctor, an entrepreneur, and I have no choice but to learn fast. And if that's what you are into, subscribe so we can get started. First, the myth of linear learning. Alright, so here's the first thing you need to understand. Most people learn linearly. They start at lesson 1, then lesson 2, then lesson 3. They follow the curriculum like it's a secret path, afraid to skip anything because what if I miss something important? But here's the problem with that. Linear learning optimizes for completion, not competence. You finish the course. You get the certificate. But you don't actually know how to do the thing. Elite learners flip this entirely. They don't start at the beginning. They start with the output. Let me explain. Say you want to learn graphic design. Most people start with color theory, typography basics, the history of design movements. But an elite learner? They start by trying to recreate a design they love. They reverse engineer the output. And here's what happens. They immediately hit walls. Wait, how do I make this text look like that? How did they get this shadow effect? What's this blending mode doing? And those questions become the curriculum. Because now you're not learning in theory. You're learning in context. And context makes things stick 10x faster. This is called output-first learning, and it's the single biggest shift you can make. Stop starting at chapter 1. Start with the thing you want to build. Then work backward to fill in the gaps. Second, the 20% that gives you 80% of results. You've probably heard of the Pareto principle. 80% of results come from 20% of inputs. But most people don't apply it to skill acquisition. They think they need to learn everything before they can do anything. But that's not how skills work. Every skill has a core structure, a handful of foundational moves that unlock most of the capability. Let me give you an example. If you want to learn how to code, most people think they need to master algorithms, data structures, object-oriented programming, functional programming, system design. But the reality? If you learn 5 things: variables, loops, conditionals, functions, and how to Google errors, you can build 80% of useful projects. The rest is just optimization. Elite learners identify the core 20% immediately. They don't waste time on advanced topics that won't matter for months. They focus obsessively on the fundamentals that give them functional capability as fast as possible. And this applies to everything. Want to learn a language? You don't need 10,000 words. You need 500 high-frequency words and basic grammar. That gets you conversational. Want to learn music production? You don't need to master every plugin. You need to understand rhythm, melody, layering, and mixing basics. That's enough to make something that sounds good. So here's the move. Before you start learning anything, ask yourself, what's the smallest set of skills that would make me functional at this? Then ignore everything else until you've mastered that core. Because once you're functional, learning becomes fun. And when learning is fun, speed becomes inevitable. But there's one more thing that makes this even faster. Third, the power of deliberate imitation. Here's something most people won't tell you. Originality is overrated, at least at the beginning. Most people think they need to find their own style or develop their unique voice from day one. But elite learners know the truth. You can't innovate what you don't understand. So they start by imitating deliberately, not copying. Imitating, there's a difference. Copying is mindless. You reproduce something without understanding why it works. But deliberate imitation? That's when you break something down, study its structure, and rebuild it with awareness. Let me show you how this works. Say you want to learn how to write better. Most people just write. They try to find their voice by writing whatever comes to mind. But an elite learner? They find 3 writers they love. They pick one piece from each and they rewrite it. Not copy-paste. They rewrite it, sentence by sentence, paying attention to how the writer structures their ideas, how they pace their sentences, how they build tension and release it. And here's what happens. By the time they've rewritten 3 pieces, they've internalized the patterns. They don't need to think about structure anymore. It's in their bones. This is how artists learn. They copy the masters until they understand the grammar. Then they start improvising. And this works for any skill. Want to learn design? Recreate 10 designs you love. Want to learn coding? Rebuild 3 apps you use every day. Want to learn how to build a business? Study 3 companies in your space and reverse engineer their strategy. Deliberate imitation gives you pattern recognition. And pattern recognition is what separates beginners from experts. But here's the twist. Even with all of this, there's one thing that makes the biggest difference. Fourth, the feedback loop that changes everything. Alright, this is the big one. You can have the best strategy in the world. You can focus on the core 20%. You can imitate the best. But if you're not getting feedback, you're just practicing your mistakes. And here's the problem. Most people avoid feedback. They practice in private. They don't share their work because it's not good enough yet. They wait until they feel ready. But elite learners know that feedback is the only thing that makes you better. Not time. Not effort. Feedback. Because feedback tells you what you can't see. It shows you the gap between where you are and where you think you are. And that gap is everything. So here's the move. Build feedback into your learning process from day one. If you're learning design, post your work in design communities and ask for critiques. If you're learning to code, contribute to open source projects and get your code reviewed. If you're learning to write, publish on Medium or Twitter and see what resonates. Don't wait until you're good enough. Because that moment never comes. You get good by getting feedback. And here's the secret weapon. AI. You can use AI to learn any skill faster by treating it like a personal coach. You can paste your code and ask, what would a senior developer change about this? You can upload your design and ask, how could this be more visually balanced? You can share your writing and ask, where does this lose clarity? AI-based tools make feedback instant and infinite. You're not waiting for a teacher. You're not limited by access. You're getting real-time feedback that accelerates your learning curve by 10x. This is how you use AI to learn faster, not as a shortcut, but as a feedback machine. And once you combine feedback with everything else, that's when the magic happens. Fifth, the emotional shift that unlocks speed. The biggest barrier to learning fast isn't intelligence. It's emotional tolerance. Most people quit learning not because it's hard, but because it's uncomfortable. You feel stupid. You feel slow. You feel like everyone else gets it faster than you. And so you stop. But elite learners have a different relationship with discomfort. They expect it. They welcome it. Because they know that discomfort is the signal that learning is happening. If you're comfortable, you're not growing. You're just repeating what you already know. So here's the shift. Stop trying to feel smart while you learn. Start trying to feel confused. Because confusion is the edge of your understanding. And the edge is where growth happens. When you hit confusion, don't retreat. Lean in. Ask better questions. Break the problem down smaller. Find someone who's one step ahead and ask them how they think about it. This emotional shift from avoiding discomfort to seeking it is what separates people who learn fast from people who stay stuck. And once you have this mindset, every skill becomes learnable. So let's bring this together. You've learned how to start with the output, not the beginning. You've learned how to focus on the core 20% that gives you 80% of results. You've learned how to use deliberate imitation to absorb patterns faster. You've learned how to build feedback into your process from day one. And you've learned the emotional shift that makes all of it possible. So if you want to master any skill so fast it feels like cheating, start here. Pick one skill you want to learn. Identify the output you want to create. Reverse engineer the core 20%. Find someone to imitate deliberately. Build feedback into your process from day one. And embrace the discomfort. Because that's where the growth is. If this changed how you think about learning, drop a comment and tell me what skill you're going to tackle next. I read every single one,